The story of financial capitalism does not begin in London, nor even in Venice or Genoa. It began in Africa and moved to the Arab world, where the institution known as the funduq, derived from the Greek pandokeion, meaning a place of hospitality and commerce, first emerged as the organizational grammar of long-distance trade. The funduq, or fondaco, as it became known in Italian usage, was a combined warehouse, trading post, inn, and commercial embassy, a self-contained enclave where foreign merchants could live, store goods, conduct business, and operate under their own laws within a host city. This Islamic institutional innovation would prove to be one of the most consequential contributions to the entire subsequent history of Western commerce. The Fondaco model established principles of enormous durability, extraterritoriality, whereby merchants operated under their own laws within a foreign jurisdiction, communal commercial organization with merchants of one nation pooling resources, information, and legal standing collectively, the separation of commerce from politics, and standardized weights, measures, and accounting within a controlled environment that enabled trust between strangers. These principles did not disappear, they were absorbed, refined, and carried forward across centuries and civilizations. The Crusades, beginning with the First Crusade, 1096, created the prolonged, intimate contact between European knights and merchants, Byzantine Christians, and Arab scholars and traders through which this transmission accelerated most decisively. The military orders that emerged from the crusading movement, the Templars, founded 1119, and the Hospitallers, founded 1099, operated sophisticated banking and credit networks across the Mediterranean that directly prefigured Italian merchant banking. The Templars, in particular, developed something very close to the letter of credit, allowing pilgrims to deposit money in one location and withdraw it in another without transporting coin, a revolutionary innovation in financial trust and mobility. Through these same crusader networks and through their expanding trading relationships with Arab cities, Italian merchants in the Levant, Sicily, and Iberia gained access to Arab and Byzantine scholarship, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and accounting that was not yet available in Northern Europe. The most vivid illustration of knowledge traveling through commercial channels is Leonardo of Pisa, known as Fibonacci, who learned Arabic mathematics through his merchant father's trading contacts in North Africa and introduced the Hindu-Arabic numeral system to European commerce in his landmark work Liber Abaci, 1202. Double-entry bookkeeping, which would transform European commerce, similarly has roots in Arab accounting practices absorbed through these same merchant networks. William Stewart, in The Invisible College, argues that a network operating through merchant and monastic channels in the medieval Mediterranean functioned as an invisible college long before the formal Royal Society, 1660. There is legitimate historical grounding for this argument. Benedictine monasteries, including San Giorgio Maggiore in Venice, established 982, were simultaneously centers of scholarship and active commercial actors. They kept accounts, managed estates, lent money, and preserved classical and Arabic texts. The overlap between the monastic network and the merchant network was substantial and deliberate, constituting an informal but powerful system for the transmission and preservation of knowledge across generations. While this transmission was underway, Venice and Genoa were rapidly developing the institutional toolkit of modern finance. Venice created the Rialto, the first organized exchange, late 11th century, government bonds known as prestiti, first issued 1171, and the Banco Giro, a system of account transfers without physical coin. Genoa pioneered private banking, the Campagna or partnership contract, documented from the 11th century, letters of credit, and sophisticated maritime insurance. Genoese banking dynasties, the Grimaldi, Doria, and later the Spinola families, became the financiers of European monarchs, including the Spanish crown. The Fondaco itself became physically embedded in the great Italian commercial cities. The Fondaco dei Turchi in Venice, housing Turkish and Eastern merchants, operated from 1228. The Fondaco dei Tedeschi, the trading house for German merchants that still stands on the Grand Canal, was established 1228 and rebuilt 1505. Arab funduqs in Alexandria, Tunis, and Acre housed Venetian and Genoese merchants with extraterritorial legal privileges. These institutions were the living infrastructure of a Mediterranean-wide commercial civilization. The critical transmission of this accumulated financial knowledge to England began with Italian merchant bankers settling there from the 13th century onward. Lombard Street in the City of London takes its name directly from merchants of Lombardy, drawing on Genoese and Venetian networks, who established themselves there as papal tax collectors, royal bankers, and commodity traders from approximately 1270 onward. Italian houses, including the Bardi and Peruzzi of Florence, set up London branches, early 14th century, introducing letters of credit, bills of exchange, and deposit banking to England. The Medici Bank opened its London branch, 1446, continuing this tradition. The most direct Genoese legacy to modern finance was the model of institutionalized public debt. Genoa's Casa di San Giorgio, founded 1407, was arguably the world's first public bank, a creditor syndicate that managed state debt, collected taxes, and demonstrated how a city-state could borrow systematically from private merchants. The connection between Italian financial innovation and London did not always run directly. It often passed through an important Dutch intermediary. Antwerp had absorbed Venetian and Genoese commercial techniques through its large Italian merchant colony and functioned as the commercial capital of Northern Europe. When Antwerp collapsed following the Spanish sack of the city, 1576, and subsequent political instability, its merchant community, including many Italian-trained financiers, migrated to Amsterdam. Amsterdam's Wissel Bank, founded 1609, was directly modeled on the Venetian Banco Giro, transplanting Italian institutional innovation into the Northern European financial system. The decisive moment of transmission to London came with the Glorious Revolution, 1688, which brought William III of Orange and his Dutch financial entourage to England. Needing vast sums to fund war against Louis XIV's France, William and his advisors, many steeped in Dutch and Italian financial practice, created the Bank of England, 1694, a syndicate of private creditors lending to the state in exchange for a charter and interest. This was the Genoese Casa di San Giorgio model, carried through Amsterdam and finally planted in London. The Bank of England's founding loan of £1.2 million from a consortium of merchants institutionalized the fusion of private finance and state power that would underpin British imperial expansion for the next 2 centuries. The earliest commercial connections between the City of London and what would become the United States were those of colonial extraction. The great London trading companies, the Virginia Company, chartered 1606, and the Massachusetts Bay Company, chartered 1629, were direct institutional descendants of the Fondaco model and the Italian Compagnia, joint stock enterprises pooling merchant capital for long-distance commercial ventures, operating under royal charter with extraterritorial legal privileges in distant lands. The American colonies, operating under British mercantile policy, were deliberately prevented from developing independent financial institutions of comparable sophistication. The Currency Act, 1764, which forbade the colonies from issuing their own paper money as legal tender, was experienced not merely as an economic restriction, but as a fundamental denial of financial sovereignty, one of the less discussed but deeply significant grievances that pushed the colonies toward revolution. When independence came, 1776, the new republic faced immediately the same problem that had confronted William III in 1689 and the Genoese state centuries before him: how to finance a government and a war without a functioning credit system. The answer came from Alexander Hamilton, whose financial vision was more directly indebted to the City of London and its Italian predecessors than most American founding mythology acknowledges. Hamilton had studied the Bank of England, the Dutch Wissel Bank, and through them, the entire chain of financial innovation stretching back to Genoa's Casa di San Giorgio. His report on public credit, 1790, and his proposal for the first Bank of the United States, chartered 1791, were conscious transplantations of the London model onto American soil, a national bank serving as the institutional fusion of private capital and public credit. The bank immediately became politically contested, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, representing an agrarian vision of American democracy deeply suspicious of concentrated financial power, opposed it as a dangerous transplantation of European, and specifically British, financial aristocracy onto Republican soil. Jefferson wrote to Washington, 1791, that the bank was unconstitutional and that its model of fusing private banking power with government authority represented precisely the kind of corrupt entanglement between money and state that the Revolution had been fought to escape. This tension between the Hamiltonian vision of sophisticated financial capitalism modeled on London and Venice and the Jeffersonian vision of a republic free from the dominion of financiers would define American political economy for the next century and a half. Congress allowed the charter of the First Bank of the United States to lapse, 1811, and the consequences were immediate and severe. Without a central credit mechanism, the United States struggled catastrophically to finance the War of 1812, relying on a fragmented collection of state-chartered banks of wildly varying reliability. The experience was sufficiently chastening that Congress chartered the Second Bank of the United States, 1816, again modeled on the Bank of England and again headquartered in Philadelphia, with the City of London's banking houses, particularly Baring Brothers, which had its own roots in the Anglo-Dutch financial network, serving as its European fiscal agents. Baring Brothers, founded 1762, deserves particular attention as a direct institutional link between the City of London and American financial development. The Barings had deep roots in the Dutch-English financial tradition that traced back through Amsterdam to the Italian merchant banks. They managed American federal debt in London markets, arranged the financing for the Louisiana Purchase, 1803, in conjunction with Hope and Company of Amsterdam, itself another institution with direct roots in the Dutch-Italian financial tradition, and served as the primary conduit through which City of London capital flowed into American infrastructure and government bonds throughout the early 19th century. The Louisiana Purchase transaction alone, $11.25 million arranged through London and Amsterdam banking houses, illustrated how completely American territorial expansion depended on financial networks whose origins lay in the Mediterranean world. Andrew Jackson's destruction of the Second Bank of the United States, 1833, represented the most dramatic American rejection of the European financial inheritance. Jackson, who genuinely and viscerally despised what he called the money power, vetoed the bank's recharter, 1832, and systematically withdrew federal deposits, effectively killing the institution. The consequence was not financial liberation, but financial chaos. The Panic of 1837, one of the worst economic contractions in American history, followed directly from the removal of the centralizing and stabilizing function the bank had performed. Without a central bank, American finance fragmented into a wilderness of state-chartered institutions, wildcat banks, and competing currencies that made systematic capital formation enormously difficult. Into this vacuum stepped the private merchant banking houses of Wall Street, and behind them, their correspondents and partners in the City of London. The firm of J.P. Morgan traces its lineage directly to this Anglo-American financial nexus. Junius Spencer Morgan joined the London banking house of George Peabody and Company, 1854, itself a firm operating at the heart of the City of London's American business, and eventually took it over, renaming it J.S. Morgan and Company, 1864. His son, John Pierpont Morgan, built the American operation, J.P. Morgan and Company, into the dominant force in American finance. The Morgans were not merely American bankers with London connections. They were, institutionally and culturally, extensions of the City of London operating on American soil, financing American railroads, restructuring American industries, and managing American government debt through London capital markets. The financing of American railroads in the middle decades of the 19th century was the mechanism through which City of London capital most massively shaped the American economy. British investors operating through City of London merchant banks provided the majority of capital for the great railroad construction boom. When the U.S. Treasury itself faced a gold reserve crisis, 1895, it It was Morgan who organized a private syndicate, including City of London partners, to rescue the federal government's credit, purchasing $62 million in gold bonds in a transaction that made the dependence of the American state on private financial power unmistakably visible. The subsequent Aldrich-Freeland Act, 1908, and the deliberations of the National Monetary Commission led directly to the secret meeting at Jekyll Island, Georgia, November 1910, where a small group of bankers and government officials, including representatives of the Rockefeller and Morgan interests, and Paul Warburg, a partner of Kuhn, Loeb and Company, who had immigrated from the great Hamburg banking dynasty of M.M. Warburg and Company, drafted what became the Federal Reserve Act, 1913. Paul Warburg's role is particularly significant as a thread in the long transmission chain. The Warburg family bank in Hamburg had deep roots in the German-Dutch-Italian financial tradition that stretched back through Amsterdam to the same Venetian and Genoese origins that had shaped the Bank of England. The formal ascendancy of New York over London as the world's leading financial center came with the First World War, 1914 to 1918, when Britain liquidated enormous quantities of American investments to finance the war, transforming the United States from the world's largest debtor nation into its largest creditor in the space of 4 years. The City of London, which had been the undisputed center of global finance since the 18th century, was fatally weakened by the costs of 2 world wars, and the Bretton Woods Agreement, 1944, consecrated what the wars had determined, that the U.S. dollar, managed by the Federal Reserve and backstopped by American economic dominance, would replace sterling as the world's reserve currency. The full arc of the story, from West African and trans-Saharan commercial civilizations to the Arab funduq, through Venice and Genoa, through the Dutch Republic, through the City of London, across the Atlantic to Hamilton's Bank and Morgan's Syndicate and the Federal Reserve, and finally to the dollar-denominated global financial system of the 20th and 21st centuries, is the story of a single evolving institutional tradition, the systematic organization of trust, credit, and capital across cultural and political boundaries, always building on what came before, always carrying forward in new institutional forms the accumulated commercial intelligence of every civilization it had passed through.